Hikaru is one of the best chess players in the world. With a blitz rating of 2874, he wins most of his matches with complete ease. But while sometimes it could take hours to defeat his opponents, here are some of Hikaru's fastest wins where he destroyed his opponents in just moments. This video is sponsored by BetterHelp. Learning chess can be great for your mind, but what's often overlooked is your mental health. Recently, before I joined BetterHelp, I was getting work-related anxiety, and as a result, my mental health was suffering. But since joining, my mental health and stress levels have been the best they've ever been. BetterHelp is the world's largest therapy service with over 30,000 licensed professional therapists able to help you with anything, whether it be big or small. And they do this while being entirely online. BetterHelp prides itself on finding the right therapist for you. To get started, you fill out a questionnaire to help assess your specific needs, and then you'll get matched with your therapist, in most cases, within 48 hours or less. You'll be able to schedule sessions at your convenience while maintaining day-to-day contact with your therapist anytime, anywhere. Not to mention a ton of groupinar sessions that go on every day. And you get all this with affordable pricing, a therapist that's custom-picked for your needs, and a support system that gives the same quality as in-person therapy. Oh, and you can switch to a new therapist at any time for no extra cost. If you want to join the 4 million people already signed up for 10% off, please visit betterhelp.com/classical. The link will be in the description. Starting with the first game where Hikaru faces Tani, a chess prodigy who became a FIDE master at just 10 years old. Tani opens with e4 and Hikaru responds with c5, the Sicilian defense. After a few more moves, the game turns into the dragon variation of the opening where white is slightly more developed, but black has a monster bishop on g7. Hikaru castles while Tani decides to keep his king in the center, which will turn out to be a big blunder. Tani drops his bishop to b3, anticipating Hikaru's next move, knight to a5. White played bishop h6, trying to get rid of black's strong fianchetto bishop. Meanwhile, Hikaru is looking to cause trouble on all sides of the board, starting with b5 and later e5. After a long exchange of pieces, Tani is the one who ends up with a much better position. And after a queen a4 check, all white has to do is play g3 or queen f2. But unfortunately, Tani chooses a retreating move, knight to f2, and is in huge trouble. Things quickly get worse for the young prodigy, as Hikaru attacks the queen with bishop h6 and plays rook c8, attacking the c2 pawn. Tani, low on time, accidentally gives up his rook for free by playing rook to c1. However, the young prodigy shows great fighting spirit, choosing to play on despite being a full piece down. After more pieces get exchanged, Tani is left with just his knight. Hikaru's rooks infiltrate white's position and together deliver the famous ladder checkmate. And while Hikaru was able to swiftly defeat Tani, this is nothing compared to when he went face to face with one of the best chess hustlers in South Africa, beating him in under 2 minutes. The game starts with e4, e5, and transitions quickly into the Italian game. Both players are playing incredibly fast, with the hustler being the one trying to flag Hikaru. After the opening moves, the position remains very symmetrical, with no player having a clear advantage. However, Hikaru decides to break the symmetry by taking the knight on f3 with his bishop and creating an amazing outpost for his knight on d4. White is forced to retreat with his queen, and Hikaru lashes out with g5. A few more moves are played, and the hustler manages to trade off black's strongest piece, the knight on d5. However, white soon gets in big trouble again, as Hikaru starts creating a huge attack on the king's side. White, not wanting to get his bishop trapped, plays f3, but that was a mistake. After knight takes f4, black has a huge initiative and is up a pawn. Despite having a worse position, the hustler continues playing fast, hoping he can somehow win on the clock. But as more pieces get traded, it is clear that white has no chance, as the endgame is completely winning for black. Hikaru soon makes a new queen and checkmates the hustler, winning in under 2 minutes. But in Hikaru's next match, he defeated one of his biggest rivals in chess, Grandmaster Fabiano Caruana, in record time. And with both players starting with only 60 seconds on their clocks, Hikaru opens with the d4 and Fabiano responds with the d6, the King's Indian defense. White puts his pawns in the center while black develops his bishop on the a1 h8 diagonal. A few more moves are played and Hikaru decides to close down the position with d5. Both players maneuver their knights, trying to find the best squares before the position opens up again. Fabiano decides to break the tension by playing e6, which is a big mistake. If Hikaru plays f4 and kicks away the knight after the trade of pawns, the pawn on d6 would be left undefended. However, Hikaru doesn't see it and plays queen to d2 instead. Both players continue developing their pieces, and black jumps into a5 with his queen. Hikaru plays rook to a3, potentially looking to swing it to the other side. Fabiano decides to play knight to d3, forcing some trades. Hikaru up a pawn, offers Fabiano a queen trade with queen to b3. Black has no choice but to accept it. Black's position is completely hopeless, and Fabi decides to sacrifice his rook with rook takes c3. After a long trade of pieces, Hikaru ends up with a rook for a bishop and a completely dominant position. Hikaru brings both rooks into the game and prepares to checkmate the black king. After h4 and rook to f6, Fabiano resigns, as in the next move, he would be brutally checkmated with rook takes h7. Hikaru was able to destroy one of the best chess players in the world, but that's still not as impressive as when he matched up with the #1 best player ever, Magnus Carlsen, and crushed him in just 17 moves. Hikaru opens up with d4, and Magnus responds with knight f3, perhaps considering playing the modern defense. However, after a few more moves, the game transitioned into the Queen's Gambit declined opening. Hikaru plays queen a4, forcing Magnus to play knight c6 and preventing the typical c5 pawn break for black. Magnus castles and plays rook to e8, looking to set up a pawn break with pawn to e5 and freeing up the f8 square for his bishop. After e5 by black, the pieces start to get traded and white is left with doubled f-pawns, but is temporarily up a pawn. All Magnus needs to do is take the knight on c3 with his bishop and recapture the pawn with either the knight or the queen. Unfortunately, Magnus mixes up the move order and makes a huge blunder by immediately taking on d5 with his knight. This simply gives up his knight for free, which Hikaru instantly captures and is completely winning. Magnus looks devastated. Realizing that there is no move that can save him, he decides to grab the pawn of f3, but the position is hopeless. Hikaru develops the rest of his pieces, and he offers Magnus a queen trade. He knows that if the queens get off the board, the game is over. After queen c4, Magnus Carlsen resigns, as there's nothing he can do. The players shake hands, and Hikaru wins in just 17 moves.